All right. Hey, good evening, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Wednesday, September 21st, 2022. This is your evening tropical update. We're looking at a very busy Atlantic basin this evening with major Hurricane Fiona moving away from the Bahamas, set to graze past Bermuda on her way northward, and will slam Nova Scotia and Newfoundland as a powerful extratropical cyclone this weekend. We have Invest 98L, which has our full attention, a tropical wave moving into the western or the eastern Caribbean rather this evening. This system has a potential to become a hurricane in the next several days, and by this weekend could be a potential storm in the western Caribbean with some potential issues down the road for the eastern U.S. possibly, but is a little early in the game for that. So that's going to be most of the videos, these two storms. I just want to mention there's also Tropical Storm Gaston out in the northern Atlantic. This is going to get close to the Azores Islands and then recurve away. We also have two other areas of interest. The Hurricane Center is watching a wave slowly moving through the kind of the west or the eastern Atlantic. Not much of an issue, and it's going to be pretty slow moving for the next several days. Steering flow is weak right now, and we have a wave moving off of Africa that's probably going to move more northward than anything else, and may get a name, but is not going to impact the eastern U.S. at all. So we're not too worried about it. So let's go ahead and quickly recap the latest on Fiona. Satellite presentation this evening remains an impressive hurricane, although it looks like it's kind of coming down a little bit, weakening just a little bit. You can see the backside of the storm really flattening out in the last several hours. Looks like whatever westerly shears, whenever Fiona is picking up a little bit more. Hurricane hunters finding a storm beginning to expand, and this is common as systems move northward. They like to expand in the Atlantic basin. The Coriolis force kind of helps them do so, and they like to get a little bit bigger. The wind fields tend to increase, but that also typically will bring the maximum wind speed down. So, we want to say it weakened, but sometimes they just kind of change their shape a little bit. So don't get too caught up in the maximum wind speeds, even though Fiona may not be a category 4 at this point. She was the last advisory, could be a little bit weaker by 11 p.m. tonight, but still a powerful hurricane and is going to pass pretty close to Bermuda over the next few days. You can see tropical storm warnings are in effect for Bermuda tonight, as well as a hurricane watch. The probability of sustained hurricane force winds on Bermuda is somewhat low right now, only about 10-20% chance of that, but some gusts could get over 75 miles an hour, and they'll definitely have sustained tropical storm force winds as the strong hurricane passes by them. And then Saturday is when this is going to get up to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and it is going to be a powerful storm, guys. This is going to be a whopper, a whale of a storm, whatever you want to call it. This could be generational as far as the impacts in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. Fiona is going to be primed to perfectly encapsulate up under a trough that's going to be swinging through there. I'll show you the GFS 500 millibar real quick. This is a trough coming to pick Fiona up on Friday morning. A very, very anomalously strong trough for this time of year coming in, and Fiona is going to ride right up into that trough. And this is what we call extratropical transition. Fiona is a tropical storm right now. She's feeding off warm ocean water using tropical processes to maintain her intensity. But this is a whole bunch of cold air along with the jet stream coming in, and this trough is going to kind of gobble her up and switch her to an extratropical storm. You can see how it kind of pivots in there, almost has a double barrel low look to it, and then it merges with the trough and becomes this just ridiculous hybrid mix of all that cold air energy aloft, and you also have that warm tropical air feeding that extra clash of warm and cold air. That's going to create a hell of a storm, and we're talking about some pretty impressive totals and looks to it. The so we have it here. Yes, the HWRF parent model tonight showing the potential landfall pressure at 926 millibars. That is, if that was a hurricane, if that was a tropical hurricane, it would be, somewhere between category 4 and category 5. Now, how extratropical storms are structured, it won't have that kind of wind speed, but it can still be producing winds over 100 miles an hour, and the wind field is going to be huge. It is going to be a big, big, big wind field. And I'm telling you guys, when you spread those winds out over a large area, you get more surge, more waves, more impacts, more people get the strong winds. And that's always a hard thing to communicate. You say, okay, well, the winds went down from 130 to 100, but it's spread out over a much, much larger area. It's kind of what happens in these storms is people have a hard time with how we communicate them versus the actual risk they pose. So this is going to be a massive impact to Eastern Canada. Folks in Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, every preparation should be underway, and evacuations or whatever. It's going to be a bad storm. It's going to be a really bad storm for them, no doubt. So, keep an eye on it up there. And again, Bermuda also going to get grazed as this thing moves by. Just want to remind you guys in New England, this is the anniversary of the 1938 Long Island Express, which is what we know of as being the worst hurricane in New England's history, happened on this day in 1938. And if this trough was about a day behind schedule, if this trough was right here on Friday, instead of right here on Friday. If that about 100 and 200 mile difference was there, Fiona would have done this, and she would have careened right into Long Island or somewhere up north as this same powerful storm. So very lucky that that didn't happen. But we'll count our wins where we can get them, because we're probably going to need some more over the next couple of days. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears to Invest 98L, our tropical wave entering the Eastern Caribbean this evening. Still a wave axis, no indication that we have any kind of closed low yet. The wave axis is probably more like this actually, but storm still remains very sheared. We have a lot of outflow from Fiona aloft. If I go back to the initial satellite, you'll see this pretty well. The upper level outflow from Fiona rotating clockwise, and strong winds from Fiona, the jet wash or the exhaust, if you will, coming down and slamming on top of 98L. That's why all the convection is being blown off into South America, and we see overall kind of a ragged storm. We also see some arc clouds racing out of the storm, indicating there's also dry air present. So you have a combination of dry air and shear, which is what's keeping this wave pretty anemic looking right now and not really getting it anywhere near being an actively named storm yet. We just have this open wave that's not a closed low, doesn't have any tropical, storm sort of characteristics to it. So hurricane hunters are investigating it tonight, and it's going to give us a better idea of the structure of the wave. That's going to help our computer models better initialize what they're seeing. These models have a hard time when storms look like this, when they're not really developed yet. That's why I caution you guys so much that, hey, when we have a system that hasn't developed yet, you have to be very wary of these computer models. You can't just take their stuff for gospel. You'll see all these pages. Oh, look, the GFS went to Louisiana as a Cat 5, and this one Euro's Cat 4 into Florida. And it's like, okay, well, there's no value with that, because we don't even have a named storm yet. The models have no idea. We're going to show you the models. We're going to talk about some potential solutions and issues and checkpoints. But how I like to track these is not doom casting and hype and all that crap. We just take it as we come. Right now, we don't have a named storm yet. We probably won't for another 2 or 3 days. This is probably going to need to get at least until it's up under Hispaniola before it has a better shot to develop. So how I like to do this is checkpoint. So what is checkpoint 1? The next 2 or 3 days. How fast does this wave gain latitude, and how quickly does it develop? That's checkpoint 1. So let's talk about that. GFS, evening run, 850 millibars. GFS shows the system strengthening quickly. The GFS shows this by tomorrow night already getting close to becoming a closed load. If we go into early on Friday morning, by Friday morning, this shows a coherent tropical storm already south of, before it barely even gets in line with Hispaniola. The European model, 12Z on Friday morning, does not show that. That shows the storm still being kind of an open wave, a little closer, but still kind of a wave axis, maybe a little bit of backside winds, but more of a sharp wave. And then the European takes about the rest of Friday, but in the Saturday before it really kind of spins this thing up. So in the short term, our models are still sort of having to correct to what they're seeing, and the GFS shows it spinning up faster. European shows it spinning up slower. I would take the slower approach right now, because that impact from Fiona is going to last a couple more days, and that stronger wind shear in that dry air combination, the storm's going to have to get up out of that before it has a better window. So, I mean, it could surprise us, but early indications are it's probably going to take a little bit longer to develop when it gets over into the Central Caribbean. All right, checkpoint 2, which is the Central Caribbean. What does the conditions look like going into Saturday and Sunday? As we talked about in yesterday's video, we are going to have a concerning pattern over the Western Caribbean. We know the water's red hot. That's no shock. It's late September. The water should be hot. But the upper level pattern is going to be the player here. Now, there's going to be a building upper high. This is at 200 millibars. This model showing us the upper level winds forecast for that time. Now, the Euro and the GFS both show the potential for an upper high to be sitting here. Upper highs, if the storm gets up under that, helps them breathe and ventilate them, and it causes light wind shear by the storm. And then if we just kind of show you the illustration here, as the GFS shows us 991, the storm being right here on early Monday morning, you would have 2 great outflow channels. You have a northern outflow channel and a southern outflow channel. This would be prime for the storm to want to strengthen in. You'd have warm water, light wind shear, and 2 established outflow channels. That's what the storm would want to intensify. GFS shows this high, upper level high, being nice, quiet, perfect for the storm, okay? The European shows something a little bit different. The Europeans, we go into Sunday and into early Monday, shows that there's going to be an upper level low near the Yucatan Peninsula. This could complicate things. This shifts the position of the high a little bit. The high is more over here on the Euro, and the storm is kind of up under the influence of that upper high. So you've got to have this wind shear thing going on with the high and the low right here. So you kind of have a situation that's a little less favorable for the storm, hence why the European model shows this a little bit weaker and a little bit slower than the GFS does. The GFS shows a little bit stronger. The GFS has had this outrageously powerful by this point in other model runs. So if I go back a couple runs on the GFS, it had it 979 just earlier today. It had it at 963 this morning, and it had it 953 early this morning. So this is 3 or 4 runs ago. Notice how much the GFS is corrected. This is why these models are not useful yet, other than illustrating the potential outcomes or the overall pattern that the storm is going to be in. This is 4 runs of the GFS. Category 3 hurricane, Category 2 hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, tropical storm, 4 runs. And it's changed that much in 4 runs. So when someone shows you a screenshot of a Category 4 hitting Louisiana in 10 days, and they go, look, this is the model, that's what it says, like, what are you telling me? You're not telling me anything. So the GFS is correcting to what it also may see as that potential high not being oriented just right. But if the storm finds that high in the right time and the right intensity, it has a chance to blow up to a pretty powerful storm. So we can't say it's not going to happen, but it's not as clear cut as, oh, this hit Central Caribbean and just a light switch flips and we have a Cat 4 moving into the Gulf. It's not that simple, okay? So that's checkpoint 2. Now checkpoint 3 is going to come early next week. What does the system look like, or what does the trough look like guiding the system, and where is the system? By this point, with Monday morning, the storm can be anywhere from the eastern tip of Cuba into Central America and anywhere in between. Now the most likely idea is it's somewhere in between here. But there are ways this already is way far south or way far north and east. The main player, though, is going to be this big upper trough sitting along the eastern coast of the U.S. This is all thanks to Fiona. She comes up. I'll back this up to show you. So as we talked about, Fiona comes up, does her transition, slams Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and it kind of creates this big trough because you have a big ridge building up over the eastern Atlantic. You have a big ridge back over the eastern or the western coast of the U.S. And you have this big trough digging down in between. This trough wants to pull the storm northward. But how strong is this trough and how long does it stick around? On the European model, this trough sticks around for a couple of days. We go into Tuesday and we go into Wednesday. The trough is still here by early Wednesday. GFS does not show that. So Fiona slams up, does her thing, big trough, Monday morning, same thing as the Euro. The GFS has the storm in a little bit different position. The Euro is more over here, GFS is more over here. But in any case, the storm eventually starts finding its way north into that break in the high pressure. Now, by 0Z on Wednesday, the GFS has already swung this trough offshore, and suddenly you're building a ridge back in over the storm. That's why the GFS shows the storm much further off to the west into the Yucatan Peninsula. The European shows the storm over by the eastern tip of Cuba because the trough is still here. Just look at the trough position. Trough's here on the Euro, trough's here on the GFS. That's a big difference. I mean, that's a huge difference just from run to run, and that dramatically changes the potential impacts and location of the storm. Now, from there, the storm goes up, and it does eventually make landfall in the U.S. somewhere. But that just shows you, just in a couple checkpoints, how radically different the forecast could be. If I go along, the GFS eventually moves us up as a powerful hurricane to the central Gulf Coast. The European takes this across and moves it into western Florida as a fairly strong storm, like Category 2 or so, I think, on the last year run, maybe Cat 3 or so. I will say this, just in a general sense. Storms that get in this part of the world, that pass between the Yucatan and Cuba, there have been some historically big ones. You're talking about Camille, Michael, Carla, Ida last year. There's been some really big ones that have hit from here. It's a concerning pattern. But it is far too early to proclaim this the next big hurricane of the East Coast before we know a little bit more. And the first thing is going to be first, when does the storm develop? How far north does it get early? How strong does it get quickly? And then how does that trough look that may pull it northward? There's a lot of potential options on the table. Central America needs to keep watching it. The Yucatan, Cuba, Florida, I mean, even the Bahamas. I mean, this thing could curve up quickly. It could curve up beforehand. And again, these models, guys, they jump around. The European has this from earlier. And then if I go back a run, it'll probably show us something different, even this morning. Tropical Tidbits is, again, free website, great website, but when these storms come and knock it, his site gets kind of hammered. But if I go back 2 runs in the Euro, it's down there by the Keys. And if I go back 2 runs from that, it's kind of back offshore of Florida. I mean, these models jump around. If I go back 2 runs before that, the storm is still way back over despite being the same time on the clock. So don't worry about the models yet too much. We got a lot of time to watch this and a lot of checkpoints to jump through, but anywhere in the central Gulf Coast, from Louisiana to Florida, southeast U.S., that includes Georgia, North Florida, Cuba, everyone, have your plan, have an idea what you're going to do. Just keep watching. It's plenty of time for this to change, and we'll see how it plays out, and we'll go from there. So that's what I got for you guys tonight. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.